ExamPrep.School. NC Personal Lines Insurance Exam, exam code INSNC-Pers12. There are 5 practice exams in this series. This video covers Practice Exam 1. The first 20 questions are free. In this video, we will be covering the following major categories for Practice Exam 1. North Carolina statutes and regulations. Pertinent to personal lines. Personal auto policy. Personal insurance coverages. Terms and concepts. Let's walk through the format. I'll read each question and its choices. Let's get started. Question 1. Which of the following most precisely defines the mechanism of risk transfer in insurance policies? A. Transfer of financial responsibility for specified losses from the insured to the insurer in exchange for a premium. B. Retention of risk exposure by distributing potential losses across a centralized pool of policyholders in a risk-sharing arrangement. C. Elimination of risk exposure by completely avoiding situations that may give rise to insured perils, thereby nullifying potential coverage triggers. D. Reduction of loss frequency and severity through the proactive implementation of safety or other engineered loss control measures. A countdown circle appears in the top right. Once it completes, the answer is revealed. You can pause at any time if you'd like longer to think. If you'd like additional practice covering more topics, see the description for our book. The correct answer is A. The correct answer describes risk transfer as shifting financial responsibility for covered losses from the insured to the insurer in return for a premium. Reason B is not correct. This option refers to risk retention through pooling rather than transferring risk to an insurer. Reason C is not correct. This option describes risk avoidance, not the transfer of risk to another party. Reason D is not correct. This option describes risk control measures, not the transfer of risk to an insurer. Question 2. Which of the following scenarios best exemplifies a moral hazard in personal insurance? A. Deliberately underreporting annual vehicle mileage on an insurance application to secure lower premium rates. B. Leaving tools scattered on a work site, increasing the likelihood of a loss due to accidental damage or injury. C. Neglecting routine maintenance on heating systems, raising the probability of loss from equipment failure. D. Storing flammable materials near heat sources, which elevates the risk of a fire occurrence. The correct answer is A. The correct answer illustrates intentional misrepresentation to influence underwriting or claims, which defines a moral hazard. Reason B is not correct. This option describes a physical hazard, which is a tangible condition that increases loss potential. Reason C is not correct. This option represents a morale hazard due to carelessness, not moral hazard. Reason D is not correct. This option describes a physical hazard of increased fire risk, not moral hazard. Question 3. Which statement most accurately distinguishes a peril from a hazard in personal lines insurance? A. A peril is the specific cause of loss, whereas a hazard is a condition that increases the probability or severity of that loss. B. A hazard denotes a factor that influences risk assessment, while a peril refers to an insurer's indemnification obligation under policy terms. C. A hazard describes an insurer's underwriting criteria, whereas a peril signifies the insured party's residual risk retention. D. A hazard refers to exposures explicitly covered by policy, and a peril identifies mitigating conditions that reduce loss impact. The correct answer is A. The correct answer differentiates peril as the cause of loss and hazard as the condition that increases its chance or severity. Reason B is not correct. This option mischaracterizes peril as a contractual obligation rather than a cause of loss. Reason C is not correct. This option incorrectly associates both terms with underwriting and retention instead of loss causation and risk conditions. Reason D is not correct. This option reverses definitions by making peril a mitigating factor rather than a cause of loss. Question 4. An insured's commercial mixer originally purchased for $25,000 has an actual cash value of $15,000 and a salvage value of $3,000 after a covered loss. The policy's deductible is $2,000. Under the principle of indemnity, how much will the insurer pay? A. $25,000. B. $15,000. C. $13,000. D. $10,000. The correct answer is D. The insurer's payment is calculated as actual cash value minus salvage value and deductible, ensuring the insured is restored to pre-loss financial position without profit. Reason A is not correct. This choice reflects the original cost and conflicts with the indemnity principle, which prohibits a profit for the insured. Reason B is not correct. This reflects actual cash value only and fails to subtract the salvage value and the policy deductible. Reason C is not correct. This shows ACV less salvage value but ignores the deductible, resulting in an overpayment. Question 5. Which heading on the declarations page of a personal homeowner's policy identifies a party with a secured interest in the insured property? A. Policy period. B. Mortgage. C. Deductibles. D. Insuring agreement. The correct answer is B. The mortgagee section designates parties holding a secured interest and outlines their rights in settlement of a covered loss. Reason A is not correct. This section only shows the policy effective and expiration dates, not interested parties. Reason C is not correct. This section details amounts the insured must pay per loss, not name secured interest holders. Reason D is not correct. This section sets out coverage promises and conditions, not lists secured interest parties. Question 6. Which of the following is considered an insured location under the definitions section of a standard homeowner's policy? A. A cemetery plot owned by the insured. B. An unattached garage rented to others. C. Vacant farmland more than 500 yards from the residence. D. A commercial warehouse owned by the insured. The correct answer is A. The definition specifically includes cemetery plots owned by the insured as insured locations. The other choices fall outside the defined scope. Reason B is not correct. Locations rented to others for business or residential use are excluded from the definition. Reason C is not correct. Vacant land is covered only if adjacent to the residence premises, not distant farmland. Reason D is not correct. Property used for business purposes is not included under the insured location definition. Question 7. Under the insuring agreement in Part A of a personal auto policy, the insurer's primary obligation is to A. Pay for damages to the insured's vehicle. B. Reimburse medical expenses of the insured. C. Defend and indemnify the insured against covered liability claims. D. Cover losses from specified named perils. The correct answer is C. Part A provides liability coverage by defending the insured in lawsuits and indemnifying for covered liability losses up to policy limits. Reason A is not correct. That describes physical damage coverage under Part D, not the liability agreement. Reason B is not correct. Medical payments coverage is provided under Part B, separate from Part A liability. Reason D is not correct. Named perils losses are addressed under property coverage forms, not Part A liability. Question 8. A homeowner with an HO 3 policy files a claim for extensive attic framing damage caused by wood rot that developed over several years from a slow, unnoticed roof leak. The insurer denies the claim, citing a specific policy exclusion. Which exclusion rationale most justifies the denial? A. Earth movement exclusion. B. Fungus, wet or dry rot, and bacteria exclusion. C. Gradual seepage or leakage of water exclusion. D. Wear and tear exclusion. The correct answer is B. The policy's fungus, wet or dry rot, and bacteria exclusion bars coverage for damage caused by rot originating from a slow leak, even if the leak itself might be covered under other provisions. Reason A is not correct. Coverage is not barred by earth movement since soil shifting did not cause the rot damage. Reason C is not correct. While gradual leakage exclusion addresses water entry, it does not specifically exclude rot caused by fungus or bacteria. Reason D is not correct. Wear and tear covers deterioration from normal aging, but fungal rot is separately excluded under the fungus and rot provision. Question 9. In a civil negligence lawsuit, which burden of proof does the plaintiff generally bear to establish liability? A. Beyond a reasonable doubt. B. Clear and convincing evidence. C. Preponderance of the evidence. D. Substantial certainty. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is preponderance of the evidence, which requires the plaintiff to prove that each element of negligence is more likely than not to have occurred in a civil case. Reason A is not correct. This standard applies to criminal prosecutions, not civil negligence cases. Reason B is not correct. Clear and convincing evidence is a higher civil standard used in special cases like fraud, not ordinary negligence claims. Reason D is not correct. Substantial certainty is not a recognized legal burden of proof in negligence actions. Question 10. After hosting a backyard party, Sam's guest trips on an uneven paving stone in Sam's yard and breaks her wrist. Sam had pointed out the uneven stone and warned the guest before she entered that area, but the guest chose to proceed anyway. Under North Carolina law, which defense to negligence would most likely bar the guest's claim against Sam? A. Comparative negligence. B. Last clear chance doctrine. C. Assumption of risk. D. Contributory negligence. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is assumption of risk, because the guest was aware of the hazard and voluntarily accepted it, thereby barring recovery under North Carolina law. Reason A is not correct. Comparative negligence is not applicable because North Carolina does not recognize a partial negligence system to allocate fault in this scenario. Reason B is not correct. The last clear chance doctrine addresses a plaintiff's final opportunity to avoid harm, not voluntary acceptance of a known hazard. Reason D is not correct. Contributory negligence involves a failure to exercise reasonable care, but the primary defense here is voluntary assumption of a known risk. Question 11. Marisol hires a live-in nanny to care for her children. One morning, the nanny inadvertently starts a small kitchen fire that spreads to the neighbor's apartment, injuring the neighbor whom Marisol had invited for breakfast. Under the principle of vicarious liability, on what basis would Marisol's homeowner's policy most likely provide coverage for the neighbor's injuries? A. Marisol's direct negligence for inadequate supervision of her employee. B. Respondent superior imposing an employer's liability for an employee's actions. C. Attractive nuisance doctrine, holding homeowners liable for dangerous conditions. D. Strict liability for harm caused by household animals. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is respondeat superior, because vicarious liability holds an employer responsible for an employee's negligent acts committed within the scope of employment. Reason A is not correct. Direct negligence requires proof of Marisol's own failure in supervision, rather than liability based on an employee's actions. Reason C is not correct. The attractive nuisance doctrine applies to trespassing children and hazardous conditions, not employee negligence. Reason D is not correct. Strict liability for household animals pertains to injuries caused by animals, not by employee actions. Question 12. Under a standard homeowner's policy, the term residence premises includes which of the following? A. Any building owned by the insured, regardless of its location. B. A dwelling temporarily rented by the insured while traveling. C. The dwelling shown in the declarations and other structures on that location. D. Land adjoining the dwelling that the insured leases to third parties. The correct answer is C. The policy defines residence premises as the dwelling described in the declarations, including other structures and the grounds at that location. Reason A is not correct. Ownership of buildings at different locations does not include them in the residence premises. Reason B is not correct. Temporary rentals away from the declared location are not part of the residence premises definition. Reason D is not correct. Adjoining land leased to others is not included in the policy's residence premises definition. Question 13. Which of the following perils is covered under an HO2 broad form policy? A. Flood from surface water or mudslide. B. Earthquake or tremor. C. Vandalism or malicious mischief. D. Mechanical breakdown of heating or air conditioning appliances. The correct answer is C. The HO2 broad form explicitly names vandalism or malicious mischief as a covered peril, while earthquake, flood, and mechanical breakdown are excluded. Reason A is not correct. Flood and mudslide are not among the specified named perils in HO2. Reason B is not correct. Earthquake is explicitly excluded under the HO2 named perils list. Reason D is not correct. Mechanical breakdown of appliances is not covered under the HO2 named peril schedule. Question 14. Which homeowner's form provides open perils coverage for the dwelling but named perils coverage for personal property? A. HO3 special form. B. HO2 broad form. C. HO5 comprehensive form. D. HO8 modified form. The correct answer is A. The HO3 special form ensures the dwelling and other structures on an open perils basis while limiting personal property to named perils. Reason B is not correct. HO2 provides named perils coverage on both dwelling and personal property. Reason C is not correct. HO5 offers open perils coverage on both dwelling and personal property. Reason D is not correct. HO8 is a modified form with special valuation and named perils on personal property. Question 15. Under which homeowner's form are both the dwelling and personal property insured on an open perils basis? A. HO3 special form. B. HO4 contents broad form. C. HO5 comprehensive form. D. HO6 unit owner's form. The correct answer is C. The HO5. Comprehensive form extends open perils coverage to both the dwelling and personal property, unlike other forms that limit one or the other to named perils. Reason A is not correct. HO3 is open perils for the dwelling, but named perils for personal property. Reason B is not correct. HO4 covers only personal property on a named perils basis. Reason D is not correct. HO6 covers condominium unit owners on a named perils basis. Question 16. Under an HO8 modified form, dwelling loss payments are reduced primarily by which factor when calculating depreciation? A. The total square footage of the dwelling. B. The cost to bring the property up to current building codes. C. The age and condition of the structure. D. The outstanding mortgage balance on the home. The correct answer is C. HO8 uses actual cash value settlement, which reduces replacement cost by depreciation based mainly on the structure's age and condition. Reason A is not correct. Square footage does not determine depreciation under actual cash value. Reason B is not correct. Code upgrade costs are not factored into the depreciation calculation. Reason D is not correct. Outstanding mortgages do not influence the depreciation adjustment. Question 17. What coverage A limit will apply after 2 years? A. $357,000. B. $385,000. C. $370,000. D. $364,140. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is $364,140 because the Inflation Guard endorsement compounds coverage by 2% annually. 350,000 multiplied by 1.02 just do 2 equals 394 bis 140. Reason A is not correct. This calculation applies a single 2% increase rather than compounding over 2 years. Reason B is not correct. This overstates the endorsement increase well beyond the 2% annual rate. Reason C is not correct. This amount assumes additive rather than compound growth for each year. Question 18. When will the automatic other structures limit adjust after the dwelling limit is increased midterm? A. Only at the next policy renewal. B. Effective immediately upon endorsement. C. On the 6-month policy anniversary. D. It decreases if replacement cost drops during the term. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is that the other structure's limit adjusts only at the next policy renewal, since that limit is based on coverage A at policy inception and reset at renewal. Reason B is not correct. An endorsement midterm does not trigger recalculation of the automatic other structures limit. Reason C is not correct. The limit does not adjust on anniversary dates other than renewal. Reason D is not correct. The automatic limit does not vary inversely with replacement cost changes during the term. Question 19. What is the maximum total payout for the stolen items? A. $5,200. B. $2,700. C. $3,700. D. $1,500. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is $2,700 because jewelry is limited to $1,500 under special limits, and cameras are covered up to their full value of $1,200, totaling $2,700. Reason A is not correct. This sum ignores the special $1,500 limit on jewelry and assumes full recovery of both items. Reason C is not correct. This amount applies the jewelry limit correctly but overstates the camera coverage. Reason D is not correct. This reflects only the jewelry limit and omits reimbursement for the cameras. Question 20. Which condition triggers the insurer to begin paying additional living expense? A. When a building inspector prohibits occupancy. B. After a 72-hour waiting period. C. When the dwelling is rendered uninhabitable by a covered loss. D. Only if repair costs exceed 50% of coverage, A limit. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is that payment begins when the dwelling is rendered uninhabitable by a covered peril, which triggers loss of use coverage. Reason A is not correct. Occupancy orders by inspectors are not required to trigger loss of use payments. Reason B is not correct. There is no waiting period before additional living expense benefits begin. Reason D is not correct. Coverage is not conditioned on repair costs exceeding a percentage of coverage A. Enjoyed this practice test? Tap like, hit subscribe, and share it with a classmate. Got a question we should tweak? Comment below, we read them all. Find full practice exam books in the description or at ExamPrep.School.